Welcome to Burn the Rules with Chet Hirani. This podcast is for people who know leadership isn't about titles, noise, or ticking boxes. It's about how you think, how you show up, and how you perform when pressure is real. I'm Chet Hirani, and I work with leaders and high performers across business, sport, and life all over the world who want to take control of how they lead and perform. Not by copying someone else's rules, but by understanding themselves first. Every conversation here is grounded in experience, reflection, and practical insight. So if you're ready to question what leadership has been taught to be and decide what it means for you, you're in the right place. In this episode, I'm joined by Ron Thurston, who believes the future of work isn't just about technology. It's about how we show up as humans. A two-time #1 best-selling author and keynote speaker, Ron is a leading voice behind Human Pride, unlocking human potential in the age of AI. With 30 plus years of executive leadership at brands like Apple, Gap, and Saint Laurent, he helps leaders thrive at the intersection of retail, technology, and humanity through his books, podcasts, and global stages. So let's get right into it. Hey, Ron, lovely to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Chad. Thank you. Thanks for the invite to be an early guest in your new show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's a great show. It's kicked off really well. A nice new rebrand as well, which is always nice, in line with everything else that's basically been happening over the past few years. Likewise for you, lots of things have happened, which we're going to dive deep into today in our conversation. But before we kick off, just to let the listeners know, I mean, we've known each other for a little while now, haven't we?
We have. I was actually thinking this morning exactly when, sometime during COVID, for some reason, I want to say like 2021, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I'm almost thinking, was Clubhouse involved?
I actually think it was Clubhouse. Thank you for saying that, because so that takes us back to 2020.
Yeah.
I think you're exactly right.
It's been a while. I mean, I was shocked. I mean, they're thinking, wow. And then we only actually met face to face last year.
We did.
Last year twice, didn't we?
I was in London last year in the spring. Mm-hmm. And we met up for a lovely lunch. And then you were here in New York. You were in New York. I should say not here. You were in New York for your book launch. And I happened to also be in New York.
Yeah.
So it's nice. Nice to have each other's support.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for being part of that as well. And obviously seeing your sort of growth and your journey sort of just take fold from the days of when you were in the Airstream, doing your podcast, going around the country, which was always amazing to sort of follow. So if you haven't followed that, I mean, I'm sure there's clips out there still. You should definitely be going to check out Ron.
There's a lot on Instagram, at Retail Prides. Yeah, it's actually saved by city or kind of part of the US, and it's a beautiful tour. Look forward to sharing, maybe going back on the road in 2027.
Nice.
Yes.
I mean, it's always been kind of like a dream of mine to do something quite similar to that, and you never know, it could happen. I mean, and having a book and speaking about it, I mean, you really don't have much of any other reason to do that but that, right? It's just the perfect time to do something like that. But thank you again for being here. Ron, for the benefit of our listeners who are watching and listening as well, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Of course. So I am a longtime retailer. I'm a stores guy at heart. It's where I spent my entire career. I was incredibly, I think, lucky / strategic, I call it, to work for some incredible brands at important moments in, I think, the history of retail. And that sounds dramatic, but I'll share. So I started my career at Gap, and that at the time, Gap was doing, this was kind of late 80s, early 90s. Gap was very much the dominant player in what it meant to build your own private label business. Mickey Drexler, and this idea of how do you create competitive, interesting, a business, like a fashion business, all done via private label, all with an expansive store count, and was able to then launch businesses like Gap Kids. Baby Gap didn't exist when I was there. So these were businesses that were in their kind of founding life. at the time. Old Navy didn't exist, Athleta didn't exist. Banana Republic was still owned by the family that started it. And over the course of the decade that I was there, Gap built these 4 now multi-billion-dollar brands. And it was incredible to be there and watch it. And my career did move between brands. I was at Banana for several years. I was at Outlet for a bit to learn that business. I worked in corporate visual merchandising. And this idea of how do you continue to take this kind of rocket ship and move it forward? And I say that only because then many of those very talented people went on to build other brands. So I
Yeah.
was able to help start under Williams Sonoma Inc., West Elm, which is a very successful now furniture brand, primarily in the US, be able to then go on and run Apple stores, which at the time were also many former
Yeah.
Gap executives were running Apple stores in the US, or the kind of fleet of stores. So I was able to be part of that. This was into like 2008, 9. I joined Apple, the launch of iPhone 2. And so
Wow.
think about Apple retail and the impact it's had. Again, when I think about the history of our industry, iPhone and the Apple Store has changed retail forever.
Yeah.
And I was very happy to be there. I'd go on to run a brand that most people know called Tory Burch, when she was still running very much a founder-led female, now billion-dollar business, and be part of what that meant to expand that across the US. And moved to New York, launched a brand called Bonobos, a men's brand, worked in luxury for Saint Laurent, running North and South America. And then I'm finished back at Gap Inc., running a company called Intermix, which was the largest multi-brand luxury retailer in the US. We had
Wow.
about 40 stores. And until I wrote a couple books, which we'll get to, but that story is about 35 years of work.
Yeah.
Always in stores, always just this love of the front line, the people that do that work.
So you clearly don't, you clearly love the stores there as well. And I guess
I
that's
do.
why this is all sort of linked, right? Your book's linked to it all. What you do is linked to it all.
Mhm.
So you mentioned how it's all strategically placed, but you've kind of like, I'm sure you didn't realize that you'd be doing what you're doing when you were going through that whole sort of journey, right? And then you look back and think, wow, this was
Yeah.
actually strategically placed and it meant to be for you, right? In terms of what you're doing.
I think, yeah, I think moving, what I didn't do, which is, it can be controversial, is stay with brands for a decade at a time. I'm very much someone who said, what do I need to learn? Why am I joining this company? What do I need to learn? How do I need to expand my skill set? What is this brand doing at this moment that will change my toolbox? And chose the brands then, just a few years at a time to continue to grow my skills. And so there was strategy of saying, well, what's happening right now? Do I need to be there? Where are they? Every brand goes through this arc of kind of infancy stages, through growth, through kind of peak performance, through decline, maybe the rise again. Every brand, not just fashion brands, go through this. And I wanted to join brands that were on the peak, getting close to their peak, on the rise. And that there's enough to choose from where you could say, I want to join that brand now. And that's what I did. And so there was certainly strategy, but things like COVID or business economics or ownership of companies and all of that, it's never a smooth ride as you think. But I did put effort into thinking, how do I be the most well-rounded leader I can be, and not just in traditional fashion.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I mean, you are a fantastic, great leader in everything that you're doing. I can contest to that as well, because everything that I've seen that you do, it's just, I mean, I learned so much from you, which I'm really thankful for as well. So before we dive into the book and your perception of the leadership that you and the people that you work with, what's been keeping you busy lately?
Mm. I'm lucky now to get to spend my time in sharing, I guess, sharing my point of view about many different ways in different formats. So I'm lucky to be invited to speak on stage as a keynote speaker, primarily at retail conferences. Sales, I would just say sales in general, not fashion. I do host 2 different podcasts about retail, about technology in retail, about people, about frontline work. those topics are really important from a podcasting standpoint, and get to share my thoughts with a large audience. And my intention, as always, is to celebrate, most importantly, and support the people who are on the front lines of retail. And it is, as an industry, one of the biggest employers in the world. And we think about, the scale and the impact that retail has. And so, yes, you would think about traditional businesses, fashion that I worked in, but we're talking about Walmart in the US, which is the biggest employer in this country. You think
Yeah.
about grocery store and pharmacy and the military and all these businesses that are incredibly important to the world. And those people do incredibly hard work every day and don't always get credit for it. We also, right now, from a social media standpoint, we are watching it sometimes unfold live about people's poor behavior. And there's a lot of pressure and stress. And if I can be the person that they say, I really appreciate when I listen to Ron or I see something, makes me feel good about my work. And yes, people are difficult and humans are really messy to lead, as you know, because you write about it. That are my ability to share positive pride, if you will, in their work and their impact is certainly my mission now.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. With that being said, then, so that's a really nice segue going into things in what you do. What would you say is something people aren't talking about then?
I think I can really only speak for retail. I think what
Yeah, of
people
course.
aren't talking about enough is, number one, the impact of AI on the front line of retail. So I spend a lot of time in this space where I really try to uncover what are the new solutions, how can they be used on the front line, how does that improve the customer experience, how does that change the employee experience. We talk a lot about AI in marketing, e-com, financial, buying, planning, distribution centers, and kind of robotics. There's a lot happening in the industry. But if 80+% of all revenue is generated in a store, and it is, how do we think about the use of technology in the front line? So I would say there's some conversation, not enough, in my opinion. I do try to be the voice for that, of like, what are the solutions that help people primarily? And then I think the other piece that we're sometimes unwilling to admit is that there are fewer and fewer jobs from the field to corporate because corporate headcount is down, and AI is changing that. AI is changing corporate headcount today and the work. And so then if you are someone that says, you know what, I love the store, but I'd also love to be in buying, planning, finance, marketing, styling, a lot of those roles are changing dramatically. And so the store becomes the primary career. And that is not always something where we want to admit. There's a lot of this, well, I'll work at the store, but I want to get to corporate. This is not what I want to do. The schedule's difficult, as you know,
Mm,
in stores. It's a
mm.
7-day a week job. Um, it's a very challenging business at times. And so this kind of loss of this kind of entry level management roles that would be your next step are changing, and in some cases disappearing.
So in that sense, then, when you said that AI obviously is huge, it has a quite influential in the stores. I mean, we all know we go into all the stores and there's something new from a technology standpoint, AI driven, that's there. Let's take supermarkets, for example. Okay. I say supermarkets, but even fashion stores now, actually, where you actually don't need to really speak to anyone when you're purchasing anything, or when you're purchasing it, you've got all these cameras which are all like, they're already detected that you purchased it. You go and you just drop your whole bag or your basket or whatever it is there, and it knows exactly what you've got. And then you
Yeah.
can just go away. Now, from an experience perspective, I have to say it's phenomenal. I enjoy it. But there are moments where I'm like, oh, do you know what? I actually really wanted to speak to somebody about something. Where has that been missed?
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to the question I want to ask you is that, what do you think needs to change from that perspective?
So yeah, and you're right, Chad. I think that there's an efficiency that can happen in retail. And there was this Amazon Go idea, which has since been abandoned by them, of just like grab and go. We have your credit
Yeah.
card on file. You've
Yeah.
scanned your phone. You walk in. They have since recently closed all of those because it's really, I mean, we all know it's really just about data capture. It's
Yeah, of
not about efficiency of selling
course.
snacks. It's data capture. But I think what can be missing or what's necessary is the support that technology can give to the front line. I'll give you an example around like coaching. And so this ability to have some kind of wearable device that's listening to you engage with customers all day, and then being able to provide then feedback on how well you added onto the sale or suggested new deliveries or new ideas, and it's coaching you is very valuable in the scheme of frontline retail
Hmm.
because leaders have so many things to do. They're not standing and just observing you and coaching you as you would in a traditional environment. So the speed of the business requires us to use technology in different ways. And then you have to think about how does like training and onboarding look like? You think about how different people, we're now in a multi-generational workforce more than ever. And so every person, and I don't assign a generation label to them, wants to learn in a different way. So you could create content today about the history of your brand that someone's learning about on your first day. You could do it via written text. You could do it via video. You could do it via interactive games. There's so many different ways, and AI can create all of that for you. So you've got the ability to create content for different learning styles. You have the ability to take all of the binders that we used to have in the back office of all the operations of how to run a store, uploaded, and then be able to speak to an agent and say, you know what, I'm really not sure how to handle this situation or this process, and walk me through that. And so there's efficiency in tech that helps the store operate, which ultimately improves everyone's experience. So I'm excited about where this is going.
Yeah, it's definitely, and it's interesting because although people's perceptions are that AI tech is almost like taking over, okay? I mean, that word, when it says taking over, it's interesting to know that when people are implementing, businesses and companies are implementing these in the organizations, that they're realizing that, hold on a minute, this isn't actually good for us from an efficiency perspective. We need to take it out. So that should just show people out there that it's not really taking over. It's a test that people are doing. Yes, some things will have to be put in place, of course, for an efficiency perspective, but not everything. And that's the important thing there, right? For people to realize.
Well, because it becomes about time. Every business, every human has limited resources and time.
Mm,
And so the way I think about it is what tools and resources do I need to use in my business, in my professional career, and in advice to the retail industry that provides time. To your point of like, if I had operational procedures that I could speak to and have access to, if you multiply frontline employees at a brand like Walmart, times even 10 minutes, times millions of people, you've got hundreds of hours of work back to the sales floor. So all these efficiencies are about giving people time back to engage, to coach, to talk about hiring or having conversations about career growth. So I think of it of if I have limited resources and time, how do I use them to my advantage here? Because nobody in retail has extra time to do anything. That I can tell you from running
yeah,
stores all my life.
that's true.
There's no
That's true.
extra time. There's very little kind of standing around with nothing to do.
Yeah,
And so if AI can change some of that, then it isn't replacing anything. It's actually
yeah,
giving me time back
yeah.
to my schedule to be more productive.
Kind of like filling in the gaps, right?
Yeah, it
In
can
that
be.
respect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. No, that's good. Thanks for that. So, I mean, look, this whole topic we could probably talk about for a long time in this one, but I want to actually dive deeper into yourself and then also the book. I mean, two
Yeah.
books. Yeah. You've
Yeah,
got, right?
I
So
do.
tell us a little bit more about book number one, and then we can move on to book number two. So introduce them for yourself, and then just tell us what is this all about and what led you to all of this, not just your
Yeah.
35-year career.
Thank you. So while I was running, I'll take you. So 2019, I really just kind of said, I've at this point, decades of experience. How do I end this love of this frontline experience? And I knew leading my own team, 40 stores was, I think I was having a positive impact, but it's like, how do I use this on a much grander scale? And you and I both know, because we have similar businesses today, of the way that you expand often your ability to get on stage or to share your thoughts is to write a book. And so I did my homework and I said, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to find a way to get a book written, found a publisher and wrote, which was the first book ever written specifically for the front line of retail. So called Retail Pride, the guide to celebrating your accidental career, because that's the other piece of it is the majority of people don't ever plan to be in retail. It's not their first choice. It's very much an accidental career. So it was a book about it is a book about celebrating you and the work you're doing today. Doesn't mean you're going to do this work forever. It means that be proud of the impact and the work that you're doing.
Mm.
And it, I think that message had just never been said.
Yeah.
And again, like I had put on conferences, I'd bought leadership books for my teams. You're always trying to find resources that are relevant to the audience. And so I knew there was no book about retail. They didn't exist. There were leadership books, great leadership books, and there were books about the operations of retail that would be more C-suite driven. I said, well, if I'm an assistant manager, I have my avatar. She's an assistant manager in a fashion brand in a mall somewhere in the US. What is she reading? What are her resources to know that this is important work or that the career you have is important? So that's where Retail Pride came from. And so that became a tour, became a bestseller and a tour. I'm proud to say 5 years later, it came out in October of 2020. So more than 5 years later, and still sells every day. And, I think about that and the language and the words and how it changed a conversation for an entire industry I'm really proud of. And so I wanted to write a follow-up, which is called Human Pride, optimizing your human potential in a digital job, in a digital job market. Thank you. I had to look at it for a moment. This idea of now technology has very much shifted kind of where we've had this conversation. How do you optimize your own human potential? So it's less specifically about retail and more about the gifts that we all have and the power that we have and the ability the first half of the book is for a job seeker. And there are many people going through this experience right now.
Of
And
course.
the middle of the book is for leaders. It's saying, how do you optimize the human potential of your team? How do you optimize when you're coaching and you're leading? What are the skills around optimizing human potential? And then the last part is for yourself. How do you optimize your own human potential?
Yeah.
And we need today this conversation about our own power and our own strengths and our own gifts and our own ability to have much bigger impacts than versus letting technology and AI overshadow what we're good at, because that's easy to do right
No, I love that. And it's timely as well. Yeah. Your second book
now.
coming out as well, especially when all of these well, I say weird, but they were weird at the time, but wonderful tools and everything that are coming out in this AI pandemic, should we say? But it's one of those things, right? It's timely,
Yeah.
but then not forgetting. And you touched on it really nicely as well, because the first half of the second book is about job seekers.
Mhm.
And that's never to be forgotten, right? Because that's always there and it's a continuous thing. And I don't think people talk or speak enough about that too,
Yeah.
because jobs are sort of being disintegrated along the way. And it's how can someone navigate through this time as well, which I'm sure the book sort of really sort of guides the individual on.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I think the other challenge today is that interviewing as a candidate is very different. You may have an AI, first interviews are often done now via AI. You're not engaging with the human. So there are questions that come up. You're either on video or you're typing. You're engaging with AI through a screening process. The next one, I've heard even second interviews now can be done. There's technology that keeps getting better that's acting. It could be an avatar of you, Chet, interviewing me, but it's not
Yeah.
actually you.
Yeah.
So I think that that's happening. And then how how am I in person and how am I on the phone? Like you have to be good at all of it today,
Yeah.
and
So
also
true.
optimize your resume and like learning how to build your network, because when there are more job seekers than jobs, just applying for jobs online isn't enough anymore. So
Mhm.
there's so much around using our own human strengths around networking and engaging and going to events and finding people who are in your industry to meet. So I'm so pro, any of these conferences that happen all over the world, these retail conferences, like go
Course.
find a way to get there, meet people, go to as many events as you can. That is how job seeking is done today.
Yeah.
And
That's a
that's
great,
really
yeah.
scary for a lot of people. It
It
is. But
is.
that's
When you, yeah,
it's,
I was just thinking
yeah.
when you were saying that, I was thinking about how I felt when I went to my first networking
Yeah.
event.
Yeah.
And this was quite a few years ago. I clearly don't have any issues now in speaking to anybody about it, but I recall this very, very clearly. I had to basically pick up the phone and call someone to say, I'm at this event. I don't know what to do. And they basically just, the only advice they gave me was exactly what I would give somebody else. And it's like, just remember that while you're there, but then also the way you're feeling, there's probably a handful of other people feeling the same way as you. So there you are. There's an icebreaker already there. Okay.
It's really
Um,
true.
yeah. But then going back to what you were saying about this, building relationships, yeah, so key.
It's
But yet
key to
people struggle.
everything.
But people
They do.
struggle.
They do. Personally and professionally, I think, which is a whole other topic. But um, you're right. The if you think about younger people that have in maybe the last 5 years done much of their studying and education online through either high school, college. I have a weekly group, it's actually tonight, of about 25 college seniors that are all studying retail at different universities across the US. And some of it is to help them get internships. But for me, it's also what's on your mind? What are you struggling with? How do you actually build relationships? How do I take these 25 students and then help them build relationships with each other? Because you're all studying the same industry. And so I also think it's a responsibility of all of us that have gone through this of how do you help others develop like the tools and the resources of how to optimize their own human potential. And I do think when you haven't ever had to do it before, if you're naturally not that person, there are ways to make it more comfortable. And that's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to do
Yeah.
for people. We all have this gift of big networks, but you and I both worked really hard to build big networks.
Yeah.
And we didn't even have LinkedIn. Like we were doing networks, but the only way to do it was to go to events.
Yes.
Today you have a billion people on LinkedIn
Yeah.
all over the world. And so you have that resource at your fingertips. Young people don't feel as strongly about LinkedIn as we do. And so it's also overcoming some barriers of LinkedIn's reputation. But there's no better, in my opinion, no better platform to at least build it and understand what's going on and then take that. And it's almost like LinkedIn in person. How do you do that? And
Gosh. Yeah.
conferences are the way to do it.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, look, this podcast is not sponsored by LinkedIn, but LinkedIn
It's not
is a phenomenal tool. It's
phenomenal.
free. It's free. Yeah. Which is one thing. Okay. You don't have to actually pay for the premium one to actually get visible on that. I tell people all the time, you need to become visible. But again, they struggle with that. But then going back to the relationship building and the power of these tools that are available that people can actually take advantage of,
Yeah.
I sometimes find with people that the people that also struggle, and I've probably been in this situation myself as well, is that you struggle with your own identity a little bit before you can start sort of
Mhm.
building a relationship or attempting to do something like that. There's a lot of doubt that creeps within us, which is perfectly normal. We're all human at the end of
Yeah.
the day, right? But these
Right.
things are normal. But then there is the right support, guidance, people out there to actually help you do this. And you clearly are doing something like this for, like tonight you said you're out with these group of students.
Yeah.
It is also helping them find their identity.
Right.
And I think that's probably one of the first things that people should actually realize as well. You can be the most confident person on the planet, but you sometimes might not know who you are.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you do figure out that and you find your identity or you have this, you summarize everything about yourself, just imagine where that confidence can actually take you if you're already a confident person. But if you're not, can you imagine where that takes you as well? Right? There's this, it's powerful.
It's really true. And there are so many variables that build that.
Mm,
It kind of where you grew up or the university that you attend, in this case for these students, or their gender. There's just there's a lot of variables that impact someone's ability to do that. And you think, at least in retail or fashion, ultimately you will likely need to be in New York City, which is scary enough on its own if you don't
mm,
know it.
yeah.
And so I think you have to think about like what are or like a London, like you have to be in these cities, and work from home is not as available. And so there's the pressure to make these big decisions, to build this network, to go to these events, to do all of it is just now it's a way of life. There's no other way around it. And I think that's when I think again, I use that language of like optimizing your human potential. Do you have the ability to do that?
Hmm.
Yes. Are you comfortable and confident, like you said? If the answer is no, I mean, I was a terrible public speaker, terrible, and now I do it for a living. Like you have to learn how to practice and get back out there. And even when you're not good at it, you go again,
Yeah.
keep practicing.
Yeah.
But that's life.
It is. It is. And I remember speaking to somebody else about this, the impact, the impact and how powerful in person still is and it will always be.
Yeah.
I said that if there was a new currency, in person would be the most
Yeah.
valuable currency. And it should
Yeah.
be because you can't beat that.
You can't
There
beat
is a
that.
lot
And
more opportunity can come out of an in person than a virtual conversation.
it's true. And that's, again, there are plenty of conferences that also bring people together within the industry that give you that ability. So like find them, attend them, find these meetups, like find, and then, when you listen to, I always encourage the students, listen to retail podcasts, find or people about the industry, find them on LinkedIn, message them about an episode or things that you said. Like your likelihood to find then personal connections is
Yes.
that much
Yes.
greater
Yeah.
because you listened, you learned. Oh, I loved getting those messages of like, oh, I heard you on this and I really loved that you said this. This is
Yeah.
how that impacted my life. I mean,
Yeah.
you will get 100% response rate from me on anything like that.
Yes.
And
Likewise. Absolutely.
it feels good. But I think that's our responsibility now. I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. That is fantastic. And one of the things is when you do these sort of things, a key is always find something in common. Yeah, because
Yeah.
there is always something. I always say that we all have something in common. You just have to find it. Okay, whether it's the same, whether it's liking the same color or anything. Okay,
Hmm.
and I think I say this time and time again. We all have something in common,
Yeah. I
whether you
agree
don't
with
even
that.
know anyone.
I
Yeah, and
agree
that's
with
what
that.
basically will open up so many other doors and opportunities as well for you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So now going back into you a little bit more. Okay, gonna just ask you a few questions around your style of leadership and what you've basically done and what you've learned and what you've changed over time. So at what point did you realize the usual way of leading yourself, okay, wasn't actually working for you?
Hmm. I think, there's the shift. There's a shift in leadership. I think often, again, like I know retail primarily, that it goes from kind of single, smaller team to much larger team. So if I use the retail example, and I remember it clearly I was a great store manager. Like I loved running a store. I liked the team. I knew my customer. I was in charge of the business. Everything that happened in those four walls was my responsibility. And it was still to this day, my favorite job is always running a store. And, you're an operator, you have operations expertise, you have visual merchandising expertise, you have HR expertise. Everything is your responsibility. So when I was promoted then to like a multi-store role, well before I was even 30, shifting this idea of like, how are you in charge and your hands so deep in everything to how do you coach and allow people to make mistakes? That is, for someone like me that loves the business so much, my patience level, I think, was quite low. And I had to learn of like, everyone learns at their own pace. You are here to provide tools and resources for people to be successful at their own, they're on their own journey. And that was for me, a lesson that it took me actually quite a long time to learn.
Yeah.
Because I like being in control. I like being in charge, and you can't lead that way. It's not
Yeah.
about you.
Yeah.
And
Very
that
much so.
shift for me really changed how I thought about leadership. And then you learn on your own what your true strengths are and then build a team around you. So that was the other piece of like, I don't have to actually be good at everything.
Hmm.
And so as I started to lead these brands, I knew I needed a really good like head of store operations, things like loss prevention, inventory management. I don't really love that part of it. And I want to be on the sales floor. I want to talk to
Yeah.
customers. I want to coach the team. I like visual merchandising and the things that the customer sees.
Yeah.
But how it works behind the scenes, I'm really not that good at. And so, how do I have great people doing that work? How do I have great people in HR to support goals and projects I want to create? How do I have good people in learning and development to help me create tools to move people forward? So, I think you narrow in on your strengths, like lead with that, and then support yourself. But that was an evolution.
That was nice.
I don't feel like you learn that
You don't.
without having some experience of
Yeah. It's not an
failure.
overnight thing for sure. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure.
So, what's one rule you've burnt yourself and realized that you're no? Let me start again. What's one rule you've burnt for yourself and realized you're now in control after burning it?
I think often the rules are made up in our own head of the way that we need to act or grow or do different things. So that there was certainly, and I think it's my age and potentially my gender of like, you never show any emotion, you move forward, you're always like that kind of lack of weakness, I think is a very much, it's, I think of my generation and just the way people led. But when I was able to let some of those rules go of like, yeah, I'm struggling with some things too. And I've been there. I've had illnesses. There are things that now are very much things that I share about and write about. And people really connect to that. So I know it sounds obvious that you're not superhuman and that you can't do it all, but I had to unlearn that rule.
Yeah, yeah.
That
And see,
not easy.
again, it's not something that you learn overnight.
Yeah.
It's not, and it's very, very, very much. I mean, I've discovered so many rules myself that I discovered I should have let go of them or thought differently. And it's taken me like 20 years to realize that. Yeah. But when you're intentional about change within yourself, these things become a little bit more easier because you are focused on you. And that's what you've got to do first as well before you do anything else outside, right? So it's really important for everybody to realize and know that these are not sort of overnight. Um, Miraculous changes. But when it does happen and you feel like it's happened and you realize that, you think, wow, it
Yeah.
happened overnight, but really it didn't. It took years to figure that one out.
It took years.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I'm also passionate today about younger leaders
Uh-huh.
of like not trying to share that there's only one way to do this. There are hundreds of ways to do this that are unique to you. That's optimizing your own power. Like, what am I actually good at? Where do I um, get the greatest joy? And same, like your career success is so built not just on the rules, but on your ability to create joy for yourself.
Absolutely. So I want to dive into a little bit more about sort of pressure scenarios. When was a pressure moment that changed your approach? Because I can imagine in the retail sector, there's been a lot of pressure that's happened in when you were in that industry. But then even so, everything that you do now too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, has there been a moment that changed your approach to everything that you basically think, I'm not doing that now. I'm doing this now.
I think toward the end of like my last leadership role, I think it's a combination of things. I think it was being 55, 56. I think you're you do have awareness of what do the next like 5 to 10 years look like. That seems so strange to say because I had such a great career, but you have to think about like what am I going to do? Like, am I aging out of things? And like what's going to happen here? And so like those pressure moments of like, do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to think about writing books and changing how I do business? That was probably the most difficult pressure moment that I had was how do I make this decision that is a little bit about walking away from this and starting over because the pressure was so high. This was again 2021 after the most difficult year in the history of retail and all over the world for everyone. And is there a future? Still at that point, we didn't know. Like, what is the future of stores? Interestingly, because of human behavior, we're back exactly where we were pre-COVID from how business is done, which is fascinating. It's not about retail, it's about human behavior and our need to be among each other in our own tribes. But that for me was a pressure moment that just I had to be able to take the risk and build something that has been taken a long time to build. And that also doesn't happen overnight. Building your own business or your
Yeah.
own, it's a lot of iterations.
Yeah, while you were just giving that perfect explanation, I was just recalling back to everything I've gone through and everything I've done, and
Right.
the doubts and the questions, and thinking, oh, should I be doing this? How long am I going to be doing this for? But then something that really hits me in that scenario is when someone asks me this question of, what are you going to do when you retire? Yeah. And I'm thinking, I don't even know what that would. And they're like, what? I was like, I don't ever see myself retiring because I love what I do. And they're like, but are you going to stop working? I said, but is that what retirement actually means? And they're like, well, it does to us. It's like, well, not to me, it doesn't, because retirement means you stop one thing and you do something else. You don't just don't do anything else, right? You're
Close
retiring
one
yourself from
chapter.
one thing. Yeah. And they're like, I didn't see it that way. And I said, well, I think that's a message that we should be sending out to people to say, you don't just stop doing something and not do nothing. There is always something to do. Okay. And you're gonna do, and then you're gonna find something that you're passionate about and that you love. But you do question it. Building a business still is difficult. This is nowhere on earth an easy thing to do. We hear about so many people's successes, etc., on these sort of things, but it's a hard struggle to do. But if you really want it and you put everything into it, it can it can go your way. Of course it can.
It
There's going to
it
be
can.
huge ups and downs. You are going to fail along the way. I mean, I've failed
Hmm.
plenty of times, but what I've learned from it all is what's led me to be where I am. So I have no regret. Yeah, I'm sure you're the same.
I'm the same. Like, retirement does seem so strange to think about, but I have more of like, I think I challenge people, my age now in your 60s of you have so much valuable insight into leadership and working on a team and business insight and successes and failures and like find your platform to share that. It's not just about talking to your grandkids. It's about how do you continue to be an influential voice because you have the experience to do that. And I don't know that I ever really believed that until writing a couple of books. And then, I don't know if you had this, but it's like, I actually do have a lot of experience and have a lot to say. And people,
It's mind
um,
blowing. You
it is
realize a
mind
lot.
blowing. Yeah, it is. And because you think, in leadership, there's always bigger voices and bigger names, and we know who those kind of people are. When like Mel Robbins can write that book, about like Let Them, which is a very simple book, but sell millions of copies. You realize of like everyone has a message, and everyone
Yes.
has the ability to think about what's right for them of how they want to share that, but to not let that go.
Yeah. No, it's very true. Very, very
Mhm.
true. Very true. So, what have you learned about yourself that's changed how you lead others?
What have I think, for me, I enjoy understanding, or I did understanding the full picture of the team. I think what I understand about myself is that I love having conversations about learning, asking questions and learning about everybody on the team. So I have observed people who have had jobs like mine who speak to the head of the store manager, store director, like the leader of the team, but don't speak to anyone else. I've seen it. I've experienced that.
Yeah.
And what I learned about myself is I actually really want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And the other
Curiosity.
thing, people will actually, maybe it's my style, my more welcoming attitude, people will tell me anything and everything. And that is, I think that's a gift that not everyone has. Of like, if I'm going to go speak to everyone except the leadership team, they're going to tell me exactly what's happening here because they trust me. And that is something I had to learn about myself of like, I could use this to really change the direction of the business because I understand what the real challenges are. I do think there are many leaders, I won't say most, that I've experienced that don't have that skill,
Yeah.
who are people are afraid of, who they built walls around themselves. They're people are afraid to give them bad news or are afraid to give them feedback for fear of like repercussion. I've known a lot of people like that. And I think when you recognize your ability to not do that or your ability to create change in a different way, I think that that can be really powerful.
Have you ever faced sort of any sort of untowards from people during your time of when you were in that sort of industry working, had really really when I'm trying to say that, like being in a situation, being in a really bad sort of not a bad situation, but really sort of tough situation where things just haven't gone your way, or somebody has said something untowards or anything like that? What sort of have you
Mhm.
experienced things like that? Because I can imagine in the retail sector, you
Yeah.
do get a lot like that. And this could be coming from within the corporation or even via customers.
Yeah. I think working in the US for a French brand, I did for
Hmm.
several years, that was very true. There was a lot of this kind of pressure to be a certain way, act a certain way, look a certain way. Was accused of being too American a few times, and so I think that yes, I have been in those situations, and it's difficult. But you have to say, I hear this, I understand where it's coming from, but I also want to make sure that I'm doing the best thing I can for my team. And I know what my team needs because of what I'd shared earlier around my ability to learn what people want. I'm here to serve them. And while the noise is distracting, it's not going to take me off my game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's how I always delivered great results, even through some of those things, which were not nice.
Yeah, that is interesting because you've got to sometimes, even though when it's directed at you, you've got such a responsibility with everybody else around you. There's a lot of pressure from that
Yeah.
perspective as well, but it's how you handle the situation which is key. What would you say has been a part of you that you don't usually say out loud to yourself that you're always trying to keep it in?
What would I say? I think, if ever being honest, I think the last several years of like being more visible and vocal, my leadership style was very much like, this is not ever about me. This was about the team and what the team's delivering. It was always about somebody else. My business today is about me. And so, like, I think that that is something I had to get comfortable with, like saying it out loud of like, there's nobody else in charge here. And so it has to be me. And my ability to do that had to evolve
And I
too.
think it's so important you saying that because, and I'm glad you said that because we don't say it often
Yeah.
enough, right? We're so consumed. But when I say we, you and I, because we're in this line of business of with for people, we're so consumed with helping, supporting people and people around us that we do forget about ourselves. Okay. And we do need to sort of recalibrate, or someone needs to basically give us that nudge. But then ultimately, we also need to remind ourselves and say out loud that this is me. It's not about you, it's me. It's about
Yeah.
me. Without me, there is nothing that I can do for you. Yeah.
Right. Right. And to trust your own judgment and that you are credible and you are experienced and you have insight. And I don't know that we always appreciate the fact that we have so much to offer others. You think I just did what I was supposed to do, or I was good enough. But I think there's such power in people sharing their own experiences and their journeys, which is what writing books is. What you've had this experience too. I think that it is sharing your knowledge with people that you just don't know what someone needs on any given day. And what a joy to be able to give them something that they needed.
Yeah. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. What would you say is one decision you now make differently? And I intentionally asked this purely because running your own business, helping people, but you're the ultimate decision maker when it comes to things of what
Yeah.
works, what doesn't work, but not everything does work when we think everything should work, right? So what would you say is one that you now sort of make differently?
I think now that I've been on my own for this will be the fifth year, I am much more aware of and willing to walk away from companies and leaders that don't do the right thing, that don't have good credibility, that don't have good, I should say credibility. It's more about integrity. How are they leading? What are they doing? Why is your business in a certain way? My willingness to walk away from that, even if there's money involved, I feel confident of like, I don't want to work with you. And
That sends a good
that
message though, right? It
feels
sends a
good.
message.
Yeah.
Feels good for you, but then also sends a message out to them to say, oh, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Okay. And
I'd like to think
you'd like
that.
to
I don't
think
know
that,
if,
right? And they come knocking on your door again.
it has happened, and not everyone does have great integrity. Not everyone has a good reputation.
Hmm.
And I don't really do consulting, but even just working with or, um, engaging with certain companies, both on the retail side or the technology side, like how they work, how they lead, how they operate is really important to me.
Yeah.
And that has changed.
Oh, good. Yeah. Such an important thing. What's one move the listener can make this week?
I would go back to like find a way to meet some people in person in your city, whatever that is, in your industry or not. What I have found is even things that are not related to my particular industry, I meet people who know someone that is in the industry. Like
Yes.
just like constantly find ways to engage. Most cities, I would say, have some forms of meetups or there are conferences or there are ways to continue to engage. So just find some of those. Get out of the house and do that.
Exactly. Yeah. Get out of the house. Don't worry about using Zoom or
Right.
Teams or Google Meets or anything like that. Okay. You can say hello, but then you can say, why don't we meet in person? You
Yes.
can say things like that too. That is fantastic. No, that's a great thing to actually let people know. So before we wrap up, I usually play a little game with all the guests.
Okay.
The game is called 10 and Done, right? So it's speed round, 10 questions, short answers. It's
Okay.
whatever comes to mind. Just say what comes to mind straight away. Yeah.
Okay.
So here we go. Question number one. What's your most used phrase at work?
Thank you.
What's a habit you've kept for years?
No unread email by the end of the day.
What's one thing you're irrationally strict about?
My workout.
What's your go-to reset after a long day?
Reality television.
What's a book you've gifted more than once?
I mean, my own, I think it's probably the ones I do the most.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
What's a tool or app you'd hate to lose?
I mean, today it's any of the language models, like the chat. I think at this point, it's too important.
Yeah, that's a top one at the moment. What's your most underrated skill?
Probably listening because I speak for a living.
Yeah. What's something people often get wrong about you?
I think I'm less scary in person than people think I am.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if that's true.
That's true. We've met in person. What's a small luxury you never skip?
Dessert.
What's one thing you're looking forward to in the next 90 days?
This is conference season. So for me, I'm leaving day after tomorrow for 3 of them. So I think that this is peak time to attend conferences.
Amazing. What conferences are you attending? Maybe listeners will be out there and they can meet you as well.
That would be, I mean, this week it's the National Speaking Association conference starts this week. And then it's into eTail West out in Palm Springs, which is a big retail conference, into Shop Talk in Las Vegas, also a big retail conference. So eTail or Shop Talk, I'd love to meet people.
Yes, it's too far for me to travel right across
I know.
and too short notice. But no, I love that. So remember that. Yeah. All right. Where can people find you and connect with you, Ron?
Great. LinkedIn, of course, ronthurston.com. There's all the ways to get in touch with me. Instagram at Retail Pride.
Excellent. And then we'll put all those links in the show notes as well, so anybody can contact Ron directly. And what's one thing you want people to take away from this episode?
To be really proud of the work that you've done and the impact that you've had on others. Don't underestimate your own power and don't avoid ways to optimize your own human potential. It's there. It just may take some work.
Absolutely. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Ron, for being part of the podcast here. Really enjoyed having you here, and we can call it there. That's a wrap.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
Before you go, take a moment to think about what stayed with you from this conversation. Not what sounded impressive, but what challenged how you think, decide, or lead. See, leadership isn't something you wait for. It's something you practice internally, daily, and deliberately. And remember this, you can't lead a life that matters by following rules that don't. If this episode gave you perspective, share it with someone who's ready to take more control of how they lead and perform. And subscribe wherever you listen and keep redefining leadership on your own terms.